In the land of eternal winter, there once lived a man and a son. It was so cold in that land that though at times the sun shone both day and night, yet still the snows never melted. And so the man and his son lived all year round in a house made of snow, and all their clothes were fur. And though the snow house kept out the bitter north winds that would seem to tear their very flesh from their bones, yet still, without their fire, they would surely have died. When the father went out hunting, he would leave his son with a pile of sticks so they could keep the fire burning brightly by the entrance to the little snow house. The boy would gaze into the flames until he could see pictures dancing there, showing him lands far away where the fire burnt as hot as the sun. And sometimes his special friend the robin would come shyly creeping up, seeking warmth and shelter. And the boy would share his few morsels of food with the robin. Though the robin was a brown, drab little bird, his singing was so sweet that it would melt even the coldest of hearts. Even so, when the boy's father came home, he would chase the robin away. He was too busy to notice the sweetness of his singing, and he didn't want to share even a morsel of the food he'd worked so hard to get. Now, one of the creatures that the man was always hunting was the great white bear. The bear and the man both feared each other, and so they were filled with hatred. But the bear was very cunning. The bear watched as the man and the boy in secret, and he noticed how they tended their fire both day and night. And he thought if only he could stomp out the fire with his great white paws, then the man and the boy would fall into a deep, cold sleep from which they would never awaken. So the bear waited, watched for his chance. And one day the father grew ill. He tossed and he turned on his bed, and he couldn't go out hunting. The boy tended the fire, and he looked after his father. But the next day his father was no better, and the great white bear watched as the boy put sticks upon the fire and looked after his father as best as he could. That night the boy listened as the bear prowled closer and closer to the little snow house. By the third day, the boy hadn't slept a wink, for he knew that if he left the fire or his father unattended, then they would all die. He pinched his skin, he rubbed snow in his face, trying to keep awake. But eventually he couldn't keep his eyes open, and so he fell into a deep, deep sleep. At once the great white bear pounced upon the fire. He kicked snow, and he stomped with his great white paws until the fire was out. Then he padded away, smiling to himself, certain that at long last he'd ridded himself of his mortal enemies. And so he left the man and his son to their fate. grew bitterly cold in the little snow house. Frosts gathered on the bed and around the boy's furry hood, but still he slept on and on. The boy and his father grew stiff with cold, and that would have been the end of them but for the robin. The robin came singing sweetly outside the little snow house. The boy didn't come to see his friend. The robin saw that the fire was out and that the boy and his father were still asleep. He sang and he sang, but they wouldn't awaken. The robin knew that they needed the fire to survive, and he knew that we needed to do. He began to scratch amongst the ashes, looking for an ember that was still aglow. And at last he found one tiny little spark, and he began fanning it with his little wings. He flapped and he flapped for all he was worth. Slowly, slowly, the ember started to glow, became a little flame. Still, he flapped on and on. And as the heat from the fire grew, it was making the robin's feathers hot, but still he kept going. And as the light and the warmth grew in the little snow house, the boy awakened with a start and realized he'd fallen asleep, and that the fire was nearly out. And he looked with amazement, and he saw his little friend the robin was still by the fire, looking after it, and he was flapping and flapping his little wings, and now his feathers were so hot that they glowed as red as the fire. The boy rushed to help his friend, and he put sticks on the fire to keep it going. And as the boy turned, he saw that his father had awakened and was watching with clear eyes. And the sickness had gone. And the great snow bear fled, seeing that he was not going to get the better of the man and his son that day. From that day to this, they are mortal enemies. And from that day to this, the robin and the man are friends. The robin follows them when they go digging for roots, looking for worms and grubs to eat. And he warms himself by their fire. And the man is happy to share some morsels of food with his friend the robin. But the singing of the robin is so sweet that it warms the man's heart as surely as the fire warms his body. And from that day to this, the robin's breast remains orange as the fire. And it reminds us to look inside ourselves for that little spark of warmth and friendship, and to tend it and fan it until its glow spreads, until it touches all those who are near us, so that even if they are sleeping, they will surely awaken to its touch.